Société Copyright tar Copyright gar Copyright nar Copyright Rail S.A. is a French multinational banking and financial services company headquartered in Paris. The company is a universal bank split into three main divisions: retail banking and specialized financial services, corporate and investment banking, and global investment management and services. Based on 2012 data, Société Copyright tar Copyright gar Copyright nar Copyright Rail is France's third largest bank by total assets and the number 8 bank in Europe. Société Copyright tar Copyright gar Copyright nar Copyright Rail has been ranked as one of the world's most admired companies to work in. Société Copyright tar Copyright gar Copyright nar Copyright Rail is one of the oldest banks in France. Founded in 1864, its original name was Société Copyright tar Copyright gar Copyright nar Copyright Rail pour favoriser le droit copyright vu le paiement du commerce et de l'industrie en France. Société Copyright tar Copyright gar Copyright nar Copyright Rail is often nicknamed SocGen in the international financial world. The long-term debt of the group is currently ranked A by S&P, A2 by Moody's and A+ by Fitch. History: 1864 Euro 1893, the bank was founded by a group of industrialists and financiers during the Second Empire, on May 4, 1864, to support the development of commerce and industry in France. The bank's first chairman was the prominent industrialist Eugène Schneider, followed by Edward Blunt, a Scotsman. The company started to hire employees and establish offices. Coverage of France went ahead at a steady rate. By 1870, the bank had 15 branches in Paris and 32 in the rest of France. It set up a permanent office in London in 1871. At the beginning, the bank used its own resources almost entirely for both financial and banking operations. In 1871, Société Copyright tar Copyright gar Copyright nar Copyright Rail moved into the public French issues market with a national debenture loan launched to cover the war indemnity stipulated in the Treaty of Frankfurt. From 1871 to 1893, France went through a period of economic gloom marked by the failure of several banking establishments. The company continued to grow at a more moderate pace. In 1889, there were 148 banking outlets, demonstrating the group's capacity to withstand unfavorable economic conditions. 1894 Euro 1930. Starting in 1894, the bank set up the structures characterizing a large, modern credit institution. As well as collecting company and private deposits, its branches started to provide short-term operating credits for industrialists and traders. It also moved into placing shares with the general public, issuing private debenture loans in France and also in Russia. Acquisition of equity stakes became a more secondary activity. The company's excellent financial health allowed it to expand its shareholding structure. In 1895, Société Copyright tar Copyright gar Copyright nar Copyright Rail had 14,000 shareholders. In 1913, they numbered 122,000. The war years were difficult and had serious consequences with the loss of Russian business. However, during the 1920s, Société Copyright tar Copyright gar Copyright nar Copyright Rail became France's leading bank. Its network had grown sharply since the 1890s, with a huge number of branches and seasonal offices allowing in-depth penetration of the provincial market. The number of sales outlets rose from 1,005 in 1913 to 1,457 in 1933. Thanks also to the dynamism of supervisory and management staff at head office and in the branch offices, it moved ahead of CRA Copyright de Lyonnais between 1921 and 1928. To satisfy the requirements of investing companies, Société Copyright tar Copyright gar Copyright nar Copyright Rail created a subsidiary, Calif, specialized in medium-term credit in 1928. 1931 Euro 1945, the 1930s were another difficult period. Given the decline in international and French business, the bank was forced to nationalize its network by closing down local branches. On the eve of World War II, the number of sales outlets was not much greater than in 1922. However, Société Copyright tar Copyright gar Copyright nar Copyright rail was active in placing numerous public loans launched during this period by the state or the colonies. The war and the German occupation interrupted its advance, but the bank moved into Africa and the United States. From nationalization to privatization, 1945 euro 1990, 1945 euro 1964, Société Copyright tar Copyright gar Copyright nar Copyright rail was nationalized in 1945. It now had a single shareholder, the state. The period from 1945 to 1958 was characterized in France by rapid economic recovery but also a greater disequilibrium in the balance of payments, calling for continued exchange controls and virtually permanent credit control measures. It was not until 1959 that the economy really recovered, but credit controls were reinforced due to persistent inflationary pressures. Sharp growth in production and foreign trade opened up new areas of business for the banks. The industry underwent some quite radical changes, one of the most striking of which was much greater specialization of credit. The range of banking services on offer expanded uninterruptedly. Thanks to its presence in New York, Société Copyright tar Copyright gar Copyright nar Copyright rail was able to take advantage of the flow of business generated by the Marshall Plan. Société Copyright tar Copyright gar Copyright nar Copyright rail continued to expand in France and elsewhere. It moved into Italy and Mexico and altered the status of its establishments in Africa after decolonization, in accordance with the laws passed by these newly independent countries. 1965 euro 1990, Société Copyright tar Copyright gar Copyright nar Copyright rail gave new impetus to its French network, with an acceleration in growth after 1966 following elimination of prior authorization for opening branch offices. International expansion was just as vigorous. It was no longer limited, as before, to the main financial centers, neighboring countries and the former colonies, with the primary aim of facilitating the business of French firms, but was also aimed at guaranteeing the bank's presence where new markets were developing, either to export the technical expertise it had acquired in certain fields, or to keep up its contact with the multinationals. 1966 and 1967 represented a fundamental turning point in banking regulations, the main development being attenuation of the distinction between deposit and investment banking, and creation of the home mortgage market. Société Copyright tar Copyright gar Copyright nar Copyright rail took advantage of this and acquired leading positions in some new financing techniques designed primarily for companies, such as finance leasing, setting up specialized credit subsidiaries for this purpose. The 1970s were characterized by two major developments: expansion of the international network and across-the-board introduction of IT facilities to cope with extension of the customer base and the development of deposit money. In 1971, the appearance of automatic cash machines crowned the success and development of the credit card. In 1973, Société Copyright tar Copyright gar Copyright nar Copyright rail opened its representative office in the Soviet Union. In 1975, Société Copyright tar Copyright gar Copyright nar Copyright rail introduced Agrifan, a food products trading company to connect French suppliers with foreign food buyers. The following year, during the Bastille Day holiday, a meticulously planned robbery was carried out against Société Copyright tar Copyright gar Copyright nar Copyright rail's most heavily fortified vault in France by ex-paratrooper and wedding photographer Albert Spaggiari. The robbery, which involved secretly tunneling underground and compromising the walls of the bank vault, netted Spaggiari over $12 million in cash, jewelry, and bullion. From the beginning of the 1980s, against a backdrop of deregulation and technological change, internationalization of the markets and the emergence of new financial instruments, Société Copyright tar Copyright gar Copyright nar Copyright rail set itself two commercial objectives. It focused increasingly on private customers via its network of branches and by acquiring specialized subsidiaries. It pursued and expanded its activities in the capital markets in France, and then, on a selective basis, in the different international financial centers. On July 29, 1987, Société Copyright tar Copyright gar Copyright nar Copyright rail was privatized. It had been chosen from among the 3 leading French commercial banks nationalized in 1945 for its excellent risk coverage, equity and productivity ratios. George Soros was a shareholder in 1988. 1990s, 2011, in recent years, the Société Copyright TA Copyright GA Copyright NA Copyright Rail Group has focused on developing its activities around 3 core businesses through a combination of organic growth and acquisitions. Retail banking was strengthened in 1997 through the acquisition of CRA Copyright du Nord, highlighting the group's determination to capitalize on the restructuring of the French banking system. At the same time, Société Copyright TA Copyright GA Copyright NA Copyright Rail looked to secure the long-term loyalty of its customers. In 1999 it entered into a merger agreement with rival Banque Paribas, but this was scuppered by a competitor, the Banque Nationale de Paris. In 1998, Société Copyright TA Copyright GA Copyright NA Copyright Rail set up retail banking outside France as a separate division, underscoring the group's resolve to make this business one of its strategic development axes. This activity was also strengthened in 1999 through the acquisitions made in Romania, Bulgaria and Madagascar. This external growth strategy has been manifested through acquisitions in Central Europe and Slovenia, in 2001. Investment banking at Société Générale in Russia was run by Jacques Demegdician until 2000. At that time, Société Copyright TA Copyright GA Copyright NA Copyright Rail became officially concerned with money laundering scandal and underground economy. In 2001, Société Copyright TA Copyright GA Copyright NA Copyright Rail acquired a controlling interest in the TCW Group. The TCW Group, which was founded in 1971, was originally known as Trust Company of the West and is the parent of TCW Crescent Mezzanine, one of the leading mezzanine capital firms in the U.S. The TCW Group operated as a subsidiary of Société Copyright TA Copyright GA Copyright NA Copyright Rail Asset Management until it was sold to Carlyle Group. Africa is also a major area of interest for the bank, with the 2002 purchase of EQDOM in Morocco and Union Internationale de Banques, FR, in Tunisia. In addition, 51% of SSB Bank in Ghana in 2003 and 50% of Janiki Bank in Greece in 2004 were acquired. In terms of specialized financial services, a department created in mid-2001, the purchase of 2 Deutsche Bank subsidiaries, Alderman Automotivia, FR, for multi-brand auto leasing and financing and GEFA for corporate sales financing enabled Société Copyright TA Copyright GA Copyright NA Copyright Rail to increase its European presence in these sectors. In 2002, it continued to pursue its external growth strategy by purchasing Hertz Lease, a European subsidiary specializing in long-term leasing and fleet management for Ford Motor Company vehicles. With a track record as leader in France for financial savings products, the group has developed its asset management and private banking activities. In 1999, its subsidiary, Société Copyright TA Copyright GA Copyright NA Copyright Rail Asset Management, pursued the strategy of developing both its mutual fund management business in France and its activities aimed at major institutional investors at an international level. With the launch of Société Copyright TA Copyright GA Copyright NA Copyright Rail AM UK in London and the acquisition of Yamaki in Japan, Société Copyright TA Copyright GA Copyright NA Copyright Rail Asset Management has taken a decisive step in establishing its international presence and is now able to offer its customers truly global fund management capabilities. Société Copyright TA Copyright GA Copyright NA Copyright Rail also has a worldwide presence in private banking activities. After pursuing a deliberate policy of acquisitions in 1998, Société Copyright TA Copyright GA Copyright NA Copyright Rail Private Banking consolidated and developed its franchise in 1999 against a backdrop of tougher competition. During the first quarter 2004, the third branch of activity of the Société Copyright TA Copyright GA Copyright NA Copyright Rail Group, GIMS Global Investment Management and Services was created. In February 2004, Société Copyright TA Copyright GA Copyright NA Copyright Rail set up a new division named SGGSSI, Global Securities Services for Investors, which provides investor services on securities and derivatives, attached to the GIMS, which regroups SG Asset Management, SG Private Banking and SG Global Securities Services for Investors. GIMS employed 7,600 people. As of 2009, this group is listed as Société Copyright TA Copyright GA Copyright NA Copyright Rail Securities Services or SGSS. 2. Société Copyright TA Copyright GA Copyright NA Copyright Rail developed its corporate and investment banking businesses under the SGCIB brand name, introduced in 1998, which as of 2014 is subsumed by SGSS. Bolstered by a sound client base and a recognized capacity for innovation borne out by the league tables, Société Copyright TA Copyright GA Copyright NA Copyright Rail was looking to develop its M&A, advisory and IPO activities through the acquisition of specialized firms. French reporter Denis Robert and former number 3 of SocGen FR, Ernest Bax, a whistleblower of Clearstream, have accused Société Copyright TA Copyright GA Copyright NA Copyright Rail of having non-published accounts in Clearstream, which was at the center of a financial scandal in 2009. The bank denied those accusations. 2010-present, 2008–2009, Years of Crises, January 2008, Trading Loss Incident. On January 24, 2008, the bank announced that a single futures trader at the bank had fraudulently lost the bank of $4.9 billion, the largest such loss in history. The company did not name the trader, but other sources identified him as JAR Copyright Rami Kerviel, a relatively junior futures trader who allegedly orchestrated a series of bogus transactions that spiraled out of control amid turbulent markets in 2007 and early 2008. Partly due to the loss, that same day 2 credit rating agencies reduced the bank's long-term debt ratings, from AA to AA by Fitch, and from A1 per byte to A2 per byte by Moody's. Executives said the trader acted alone and that he may not have benefited directly from the fraudulent deals. The bank announced it will be immediately seeking €5.5 billion in financing. On the eve and afternoon of January 25, 2008, police raided the Paris headquarters of Société Copyright TA Copyright GA Copyright NA Copyright Rail and Kerviel's apartment in the western suburb of Neuilly, to seize his computer files. French presidential aide Raymond Soubi stated that Kerviel dealt with $73.3 billion. 3 union officials of Société Copyright TA Copyright GA Copyright NA Copyright Rail employees said Kerviel had family problems. On January 26, 2008, the Paris prosecutor's office stated that Jérôme Kerviel, 31, in Paris, is not on the run. He will be questioned at the appropriate time, as soon as the police have analyzed documents provided by Société Copyright TA Copyright GA Copyright NA Copyright Rail. Spiegel Online stated that Kerviel may have lost $2.8 billion on 140,000 contracts earlier negotiated due to DAX falling 600 points. Société Copyright TA Copyright GA Copyright NA Copyright Rail S.A. says it had a net loss in the fourth quarter of 2007 after the French bank took a $4.9 billion hit, closing the unauthorized trading positions of JAR Copyright Rami Kerviel. March 2008. Missing consignment of gold by Goldar. On March 21, 2008, Société Copyright TA Copyright GA Copyright NA Copyright Rail filed suit in Istanbul Commercial Court against Goldar, a Turkish jewelry firm, claiming the company had not paid for 15 tons, 15,000 a kg, of gold it had received through a consignment agreement. Goldar stated that the consignment agreement was only for 3,250 a kg of gold with a value of $94 million. In June 2008, the court found Goldar not guilty. March 2009, potential loss of $11 billion averted due to U.S. government bailout of AIG. On March 15, 2009, AIG disclosed that, among its counterparties, Société Copyright TA Copyright GA Copyright NA Copyright Rail was to date the largest recipient of both credit default swap collateral postings and CDS payments, payments made possible in part by the 2008 U.S. government bailout of AIG. 2010, a year of recovery? Following 2 years of crisis resulting from the revelation of the Kerviel fraud and then from the eruption of the global financial crisis, the bank appeared to have put things behind it in 2010. Kerviel trial. The trial of JAR copyright Rami Kerviel began on June 8, 2010 at the Paris Palais de Justice, and lasted until June 25. Société copyright TAR copyright GAR copyright NAR copyright Rail filed the civil suit. The former Société copyright TAR copyright GAR copyright NAR copyright Rail trader was represented by Olivier Misa, and the bank was represented by Jean Vale, Jean Reinhardt and Francesco Martino. The trial aroused much media interest, with a record number of requests for accreditation from journalists. Following more than 2 weeks of highly technical debate with much focus on January copyright Rami Kerviel's character, the state prosecutor called for the former trader to be given a 5-year prison sentence, 2 of them suspended, whilst Kerviel's lawyer called for his client to be acquitted. The ruling was announced on October 5, 2010. At 11 a.m. JAR copyright Rami Kerviel was found guilty of the 3 charges filed against him: breach of trust, fraudulent inputting of data into an IT system and forgery and use of forged documents. He was found to be solely responsible for the record loss suffered by Société copyright TAR copyright GAR copyright NAR copyright Rail in early 2008, and was sentenced to 5 years in prison, with 2 of those years suspended, and ordered to pay damages of €4.9 billion to the bank. JAR copyright Rami Kerviel immediately launched an appeal on the basis of an unreasonable decision, according to his lawyer Olivier Misa. Kerviel's sentence has therefore been suspended until the appeal, which is due to take place between June 4 and June 28, 2012, and he is presumed innocent until the time. The huge amount of damages Kerviel was ordered to pay gave rise to much emotion amongst the general public and online. The sentencing of one man to pay such a large sum of money was met with incomprehension and anger amongst Internet users. The bank announced that the sum was symbolic, and it had no expectation that the sum would be paid by JAR copyright Rami Kerviel. An ongoing transformation plan, in business terms. Société copyright TAR copyright GAR copyright NAR copyright Rail appeared intent on moving on and implementing an in-depth transformation in 2010. On June 15, the bank presented its Ambition SG 2015 program to investors, the aim of this program being to deliver growth with lower risk by 2015, using the lessons learned from the crisis. Positive financial results. In 2010, the company saw an upturn in its financial results. Over the first half, the group recorded net income of €2.15 billion. These good figures were presented shortly after the publication of the results of the stress tests of 91 European banks, results that confirmed the financial solidity of the main 4 French banks, including Société Générale. A new communication campaign. In mid-March 2011, Société copyright TAR copyright GAR copyright NAR copyright Rail unveiled its new communication campaign, based on a new slogan, Building Team Spirit Together. This campaign is in line with the group's Ambition SG 2015 transformation program, the aim of which is to put customer relations at the heart of the bank's business. The press and television advertising campaign was developed by Paris-based communication agency Fred and Farid Group. This new slogan replaces the previous one, Honest la pauvre Ada, which in turn replaced other slogans such as Si on en parlat and Conquérons nos talents. 2011 financial crisis. During the summer of 2011, the financial markets, fearing the collapse of the Eurozone associated with the European sovereign debt crisis, were severely shaken. European and French bank shares recorded substantial falls. It was within this context that Britain's Mail on Sunday published, on Sunday August 7, an article in which it announced Société copyright TAR copyright GAR copyright NAR copyright Rail's imminent bankruptcy. The newspaper quickly published a retraction and its apologies but, despite that, the rumour gathered pace, notably on social networks, resulting in a spectacular fall in Société copyright TAR copyright GAR copyright NAR copyright Rail's share price and in bearish speculation. Socia copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail successfully filed a suit in the UK against Associated Press for substantial damage to its reputation and prejudice to its trade. Bearish pressure, influenced by speculation but also by investor suspicion, continued to affect Socia copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail's share price through to the end of 2011. Over the year, the share lost 57.22% of its value, the third worst CAC 40 performance of 2011. 2014 innovation at Société Générale. A long history. Société Générale owes its 150 years of history in part to ceaseless innovation by its men and women and the teams on which they work. Presentation. Socia copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail is a universal bank. The group consists of three main pillars backed by two business lines. Activity. Socia copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail's three pillars, at the heart of the development of its relationship banking model, are, retail banking in France, international retail banking, corporate and investment banking, with investment banking and fixed income, structured financing, debt and forex activities on the one side, and equity and consulting activities on the other. The development of these three pillars is backed by two other core activities, namely, specialized financial services and insurance, private banking, global investment management and services, patronage and sponsorship. The group has a long-term active and generally very discreet support policy. Its sponsorship of rugby is well known, but its support in other fields such as music, contemporary art, disabled sport and corporate citizenship, professional integration and disadvantaged children, is less known. Leadership. FRA copyright DAO copyright Rick Ouda copyright AA Euro Chairman and CEO, ZA copyright Veron Cabanza Euro Deputy CEO, Jean-François Section War Samarsalia Euro Deputy CEO and Head of French Retail Banking, Bernardo Sanchez Insura Euro Deputy CEO, Executive Committee members of the group to January 3, 2012. FRA copyright DAO copyright Rick Ouda copyright AA Euro Chairman and CEO, ZA copyright Veron Cabanza Euro Deputy CEO, Jean-François Section War Samarsalia Euro Deputy CEO and Head of French Retail Banking, Bernardo Sanchez Insura Euro Deputy CEO. Bertrand Badra copyright Euro Chief Financial Officer, Caroline Guillaumin Euro Head of Group Communication, Didier Hauguel Euro Head of Specialized Financial Services and Insurance, Anne-Marion Boucher-Couta Euro Head of Group Human Resources to July 15, 2012 then country leader in China, Jean-Luc Pereira Euro Head of International Retail Banking, Frana Section Ois Mercadal de la Solza Euro Head of Corporate Resources and Innovation, Binawa Registered Trademark Tierten Walter Euro Group Chief Risk Officer, Jacques Ripoll Euro Head of Global Investment Management and Services, Patrick Suet Euro Corporate Secretary and Group Chief Compliance Officer, Didier Valle Euro CEO of Corporate and Investment Banking, Board of Directors members, FRA copyright DAO copyright Rick Ouda copywriter, Anthony Wyand, Robert Castaigne, Michel Sicola, Fr. Jean-Martin Foltz, Kira Hazo, Jean-Bernard La copyright V, Ana Maria Lopi Rivas, Permil Elizabeth Lulin, Gian Emilio Osculati, Nathalie Rach, Luc van der Veldia, Fr. Kenji Matsuo, Non-Voting Director, Baroness Chantal Evelinda Rothschild Crutchfield, Special Non-Voting Director, France Huzet, elected by employees, Patrick Delacoute, elected by employees, affiliates of Socia copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail include, Africa, a Euro Socia. Copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail Algerie, a Euro Socia copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail de Banksor Benin, a Euro Socia copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail de Banksor Burkina, a Euro Socia copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail de Banksor Cameroon, a Euro Socia copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail de Banks and Cartier, a Euro Socia copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail Social Security Bank in Ghana, a Euro Socia copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail de Banks. N Guinea copyright, a Euro BFE Société copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail in Madagascar, a Euro Société copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail EA in Mauritania, a Euro Société copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail Marocain des Banques in Morocco, a Euro Société copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail Bank of Nigeria, a Euro Société copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail de Banques or ZAR copyright nar copyright gal, a Euro Société copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail Bank South Africa, a Euro Union Internationale de Banques FR, in Tunisia, Asia, a Euro Société copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail Global Solution Center in Bangalore, India, a Euro Société copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail de Banque Jordanie, a Euro Société copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail de Banque or Liban in Lebanon, a Euro Société copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail de Banque or Japan, a Euro Société copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail corporate and investment banking Dubai, a Euro Société copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail Saudi Arabia, Europe, a Euro banker. Société Générale Albania, a Euro Belros Bank in Belarus, a Euro Société copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail private banking in Belgium, a Euro Société copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail Express Bank in Bulgaria, a Euro Splitska Banka in Croatia, a Euro Société copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail Cyprus, a Euro Komunalna Banka in Czech Republic, a Euro Bank Republic in Georgia, a Euro Société copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail S.A. in Ireland, a Euro General Financing in Lithuania, a Euro Société copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail. Bank and Trust Luxembourg, a Euro Internal Audit Department, Luxembourg, a Euro Société copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail Securities Services in France, a Euro Wilson Barani Société copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail Bank in France and Belgium, a Euro Oritska Banka SC Macedonia, a Euro Mobiazbanka in Moldova, a Euro Société Générale Bank Montenegro, a Euro Société copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail Finance in Norway, a Euro Eurobank SA in Poland, a Euro BRD, Group Société copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail in Romania, a Eurobank Socia. Copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail Vostok in Russia, a Euro Rosbank in Russia, a Euro Rusfinance Bank in Russia, a Euro Delta Credit Bank in Russia, a Euro Société copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail SRBIJA in Serbia, a Euro SKB Banka, SL, in Slovenia, South America, a Euro Banco Caxique in Brazil, a Euro Banco Pequena in Brazil, FIMAT International Bank SA is a global brokerage and prime brokerage organization and is a wholly owned subsidiary of Société copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail group. FIMAT businesses involve a range of clearing and execution services on listed or OTC derivatives and cash products. FIMAT was created in 1986, following the creation of the Paris-based MATIF, the French Futures and Options Exchange, in February 1986. In 2005 FIMAT completed the acquisition of Cube Financial. Merged in January 2008 with Kalin Financial to form Nwedge. Nwedge's holders were SG and Kalin until 2014 when SG purchased Credit Agricole's stake. Leixer Asset Management is an investment company based in France, and a wholly owned subsidiary of Société copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail. It offers exchange-traded index funds and other ETFs, exchange-traded notes, and several other products to private and corporate investors. Economy. Société copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail's head office is in the Tour Société copyright tar copyright gar copyright nar copyright rail in the business district of La Dar copyright fence in the city of Nanterre, west of Paris. The company moved there in June 1995 from the former head office along Boulevard Haussmann in the 9th arrondissement of Paris. The head office has 7,000 employees. The former head office remains as the company's registered office. Controversy. In 2010 the French government's Autorité Copyright de la Concurrence fined 11 banks, including Société Copyright A, Copyright GA, Copyright NA, Copyright Rail, the sum of €384,900,000 for colluding to charge unjustified fees on check processing, especially for extra fees charged during the transition from paper check transfer to exchange's check image electronic transfer. See also: BRD, Group Société Copyright A, Copyright GA, Copyright NA, Copyright Rail, CITIC, Inter Alpha Group of Banks, JAR Copyright Rami Kerviel, Nick Leeson, List of investors in Bernard L. Madoff Securities, Notes and References. External links, Official website, List of Société Copyright A, Copyright GA, Copyright NA, Copyright Rail agencies, Swift codes in France.